All right, this video is going to have problems 14 through 17. This section of the test will be in level 2, and you're going to get to pick whatever method you want to use to solve, except for graphing. So the only methods you can use here are factoring, quadratic formula, and complete the square. If you solve by graphing and show no work, you will not get points. You must show work in order to earn full credit. Graphing you can only use if you're using it to check your work, but you must show work for another method originally. So number 14, you can use any 3 of those methods, okay? Number 14, we have a quadratic, 3x squared minus 2x. Now there's only 2 terms here, so you are totally welcome and able to use the quadratic formula or complete the square. But if there's only 2 terms, generally you can factor, at least in the problems we're going to give you. However, you can use quadratic formula and complete the square. Here, I am going to factor because I can see right away that this is going to have a GCF, and that means I can pull out a GCF of 3. And I will have x squared minus 9. Now, I'm actually not done factoring here because x squared minus 9 can continue to be factored by the method of difference of squares. And difference of squares here, I'm going to take the square root of x, or x squared, which is x, and the square root of 9, which is 3. Remember, one parenthesis gets a plus, one gets a minus. Now to actually solve this quadratic, I want to set each of those factors equal to 0. Now the thing you need to remember on this problem is you're only setting the factors that have an x equal to 0. If I set 3 here equal to 0, that is a false statement, and I don't want to make a false statement. 3 also doesn't have an x. We will learn when we come back from winter break what that 3 does to the quadratic. For now, it's just there. Later, we're going to learn what that actually does to the picture. So when I actually solve this, I get one root at 3 and another root at negative 3. So in order to earn full credit, you would have to show all this work. If you solved it by graphing, you could only use that to check your solutions. Number 15. All right, my suggestion is always check to see if you can factor because that's going to make things faster. So I need to see, are there 2 numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 8? Well, the only numbers that multiply to 3 are 1 and 3. Those definitely don't add to negative 8, so I cannot factor. Next thing, you know I love complete the square. This would be a perfect one because there's a 1 in front of the x squared. So you want to see if there's a 1 in front of the x squared and if this middle term is even, which I do have. So let's use complete the square. It is set up perfect. You could, since it doesn't factor, you can always use quadratic formula or complete the square. There are just certain cases where one is easier than the other. And in this problem, I think complete the square will be much faster. So I'm going to start by subtracting 3. And then when I subtract the 3, I'm going to replace it with a box. And on the right, I'm also going to put a box. Now within that box, I have to take half of b and square it. So that'd be negative 4 squared, which is 16. The right-hand side simplifies. And the left-hand side, remember, you're always going to get 2 factors that are the same, so I can take the whole quantity squared, and the number after the x is half of that middle number. Now all you have to do is solve for x. So if x minus 4 equals, in front of the square root, I put a plus or minus. And then when I add 4, I squeeze it right in front of the plus or minus. So my solutions here are 4 plus 4 minus radical 13. And that's it. That's your whole answer. That's not rational, which is why you couldn't factor it. And if you did quadratic formula, you would get the same solution. If you did quadratic formula and don't get the same solution, ask your teacher. Number 16. All right, 2 terms again. So I am able to use any 3 method, but this time I should notice, just like in number 14, that there's a GCF here of x. And when I factor in x out of both terms, I'm left with x times 7x minus 5. It factors, which is the method I used, and factoring is the fastest. All right, so I said every factor with an x equal to 0. X equals 0 is super fast. That's already one of the roots. On the second one here, I add 5 and then divide by 7. And that is my solutions. That's it. So if you recognize that you can factor, factoring is very quick. Number 17. All right, let's see if I can factor. 3 times 5 is 15. Two numbers that multiply to 15 and add to 2. Well, you could say 3 and 5, but they both have to be positive, and that's not going to get me 2. So factoring is not going to work. I can try to complete the square, but what I'd have to do is divide everything by 3, and 2 and 5 are not divisible wholly by 3. So it looks like quadratic formula is going to be our best bet. Although you could use complete the square, you would just get a lot of fractions. In order to use the quadratic formula, I'm going to know my A, B, and C. And take the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Now I'm going to need my calculator here, and I'm going to calculate the value under the square root. So I'm going to calculate 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times 5, which gives me negative 56. Which makes sense why I couldn't factor it, because when I simplify that, I'm going to have an I in my answer. Now off to the side here, let's simplify the square root of negative 56. You know there's going to be an I. Now let's find the biggest perfect square that goes in there. I think it's going to be 4, but let's see. 56 divided by 4, 14. Yeah, that'll work. 4 and 14. So this will be radical 4 times radical 14, which simplifies to be 2i radical 14. So what I'm going to do is use that 2i radical 14 to replace that square root. So I have negative 2 plus or minus 2i radical 14 over 6. Now, some of you were simplifying this fraction before you simplify the square root. Don't do that. Wait until you simplify the square root fully. Then you can recognize that all of these numbers exclude the square root, don't include it, are all divisible by 2. So if I divide them all by 2, except the square root, that's going to be your most simplified answer. And since there's an I, that is why you could not factor. All right, we have one more video. That's it for this one.